Yes?
I want a meeting.
Yes, when?
8600 Alvarado Street, 7 a.m. tomorrow. Didn't know just the man for the job.
Everything went okay?
It got done.
You see things. You view people differently than anybody does. You're a goddamn machine. No, but you got a problem, Arthur. You need companionship.
Day before yesterday, they stopped answering my calls.
Arthur Bishop,
Yes.
special delivery,
There must be a mistake.
Now we would all prefer that you handle this.
We would like you to go ahead. Anytime.
You?
I would rather it was you, Arthur.
It's gonna be a loss.
what was your connection with him?
He worked for my father a long time back.
He was your mentor. He chose you over me. You owe him. And now that he's gone, you owe me.
You ever hear of the term mechanic used outside of its normal meaning?
Guy who fixes things, problems.
A hitman.
There are times when I could use a backup, and you seem to have the aptitude.
You've got a partner, Mr. Bishop.
Point the gun as though it were an extension of your arm. That's better.
He'd like to know how Harry McKenna's son figures.
He'll be working with me from now on.
Does he know you killed his father?
Here we go.
They're in the wall!
He's very untidy, Mr. Bishop. This one has to be done fast.
You're on a short leash with this one.
You ever kill someone you know?
Murder is only killing without a license.
Revenge is an emotion that can get you killed.
It's a setup. I broke a rule.
Now I'm gonna put a price on your head that's so big.
Nobody lives forever.
There's no peace.
Charles Bronson is Arthur Bishop, the mechanic. A mechanic is a professional killer, a hitman, a problem solver, and Arthur Bishop is the best. He has the unique talent of killing targets without it looking like they were murdered. After meticulously studying, preparing, and planning, he can make his victims die from accidents. There's no suspicion cast at their demise and no need to look for any suspects, since their big adios didn't appear sinister in any way. Bishop lives a solitary life. He can't trust anyone and has no personal relationships. Although he listens to classical music and is surrounded by an impressive art collection, he lives a lonely existence. He does manage to satisfy his sexual needs by hiring a lady of the night, played by Bronson's wife, Jill Ireland. Supposedly, Bronson accepted the role of Bishop only if they could find a part for Ireland, something he would often do for his wife. They ended up making 15 films together. There's really not many roles for a woman in The Mechanic, so Ireland plays the prostitute. At first we think there's actually a relationship between the two, with affection and emotion. Then we see it's all an act. Arthur pays her to play the part of a loving woman. She casually tells him the extra effort she put into her performance this particular time will cost him extra. It's a pretty sad existence for Bishop. It's a pretty pitiful scene and really illustrates just how isolated and alone Arthur is. This is a real contrast to how the prostitute character is done in the remake. Bishop does have a mentor father figure, Harry McKenna, played by Keenan Wynn. Harry works for the big secret organization. We see they have a long history together going back to Bishop's childhood. One day, Bishop receives his latest assignment, i.e. target, and it's Harry.
Just doesn't make any sense, Arthur. They said I broke the agreement. Day before yesterday, they stopped answering my calls.
Bishop gets the go-ahead and dutifully executes the job with little hesitation. It's at Harry's funeral Bishop runs into Harry's son, Steve. While Steve at first seems to be a spoiled rich kid, Arthur senses there's more to him and he could make a fine protege. Steve is also intrigued by this mysterious Arthur.
It takes a very special kind of person to pick up the tab for that kind of living. You say you dig it, but you're talking about something you really know nothing about.
And you do.
Do I?
We learn that Bishop is not in the best of health. We've seen him popping some pills, and after he collapses and is checked out at the hospital, the doctor tells him he's suffering from acute anxiety reaction. His recommendation is for him to get checked out and consider seeing a psychiatrist. With some guilt, the desire to make some kind of human connection, and perhaps recognizing his own mortality, Arthur brings Steve into his life and begins to train him as a mechanic. After their first job together, which takes place at a pretty familiar-looking building, Arthur's usual well-laid plan gets derailed, and what should have been a very quiet job turns into something much more chaotic and improvised. The job gets done, but not as smoothly as what's expected of Bishop by his employers. Arthur's employers also aren't very keen on the idea that Harry's son is now going to be Arthur's partner. It's explained to him that the organization survives by a set of rules by everyone involved, implying that Bishop has just broken one.
An organization survives only because its members are willing to sacrifice certain personal choices for the good of all.
By the way, I love how the top bad guy is outside his mansion on a sunny day, painting at his easel, with a chained-up leopard as his model. I mean, don't mess with this guy. After Arthur says he will take responsibility for Steve, he's handed an important job that has to be done fast. This goes against Arthur's usual MO of taking his time and doing meticulous planning. But since his employers aren't fond of the hiccup of Arthur's last job, he's forced to do this one to smooth things over with them. Arthur begins to have suspicions about Steve. Does he know he killed his father? And if so, does he want revenge for it? Arthur and Steve fly off to Italy to execute this important assignment. They stake out their target, make a plan, and prepare to board the target's private yacht. However, it's all a setup. The targets are Arthur and Steve. They've upset the balance in this organization, so they have to go. As an extended action sequence unfolds with classic Bronson car chases, shootouts, and explosions, Arthur and Steve manage to survive. Letting his guard down, Arthur is poisoned by Steve. As Arthur is dying, Steve explains he will take all the knowledge and skills he's learned and go into the mechanic business for himself. Arriving back in the US and ready to slip into Arthur's life, Steve is left a final surprise. Arthur had prepared for Steve's betrayal and blows him sky high from his grave. Directed by Michael Winner, who Bronson would work with on 6 films, The Mechanic is one of Bronson's best movies. Both he and Vincent are both very good in their roles, and they sell the budding mentor-student relationship and the drama that is unfolding between the two. While not packed with 70s action as much as you would expect, it's more of a character study. It does have a sufficient amount of action scenes that will make Bronson fans happy. The opening of the film is an extended 15-minute sequence of Bronson at work. No dialogue, just him going through a meticulous series of tasks, patiently waiting to finally kill a target. It's a great slow burn introduction. Some of the action in Naples, with cars driving on winding roads and crashes, are pretty impressive. There are some 70s standard moments, like motorcycles driving through garden parties. It has a similar vibe to the boats crashing through the wedding party in Live and Let Die. Bronson became famous for his tough guy image. Especially in his later canon years, his on-screen image became a cliche as just being an unstoppable force. The best Bronson roles was where he was able to show some vulnerability and weakness that was peeking out from his tough guy exterior. His Arthur Bishop has that, not only physically, but emotionally as well. It appears he has a lot of stuff swirling around in his head as he sits quietly in his fancy house. I always thought the scene of Steve visiting a suicidal girlfriend was kind of a strange one. Arthur tags along and watches as she slits her wrist, wanting Steve to save her. But he doesn't. He just sits and watches as she bleeds out. No panic or feelings for her.
I know he'll stop me, I know. I know he will. I know he feels something.
It's meant to demonstrate he's got the right mentality for mechanic kind of work, but I always felt it's a weird scene. Witnessing that and some of his more daredevil antics, it starts to make sense why Arthur would think Steve would make a good apprentice. Someone who not only would provide him companionship, but maybe be even someone he needs. Heck, the doctor recommended he see a shrink. Maybe Steve could be the fix he needs in his life and his health. Maybe he needs Steve more than Steve needs him. It would just be nice to have someone to talk to.
I'm going to teach you all I can. After that, you can choose how you want it to go. You in?
You've got a partner, Mr. Bishop.
The Mechanic was based on a story by Louis John Carlino. In his original story, Carlino had made Arthur and Steve explicitly gay. The homosexual relationship was a major component in the story, where Steve would set out to sexually seduce and manipulate Arthur in order to get close to him and take him down. But as their relationship evolves, Steve would find he was actually falling in love with Arthur. This ignited a conflict within him of having to kill Arthur to become the #1 mechanic. This angle of the story got stripped out and left Carlino feeling betrayed, saying the film was one of the great disappointments in his life. I think there's still hints of a homosexual relationship between the two that can be found if you look hard enough. I mean, some of the shots from the angle of Vincent's crotch, at times Bronson is staring at Vincent, looking like he's taking him all in. It's like they begin dating, engaging in violent rituals. They're at a strip club and never even look at the girl. You can start to find subtext depending how hard you want to look for it. As it is, The Mechanic has a nice, tidy, clean-cut ending. No sequels for this Mechanic. There's a groovy score by Jerry Fielding, a compelling story with action, some good performances. It's one of Charles Bronson's best. Jason Statham is Arthur Bishop, the Mechanic. In 2011, director Simon West did his take on The Mechanic, with Jason Statham as Arthur Bishop and Ben Foster as Steve McKenna. It's the same basic setup. Things open with an elaborate hit with Bishop drowning a guy who's in a well-protected compound. Bishop meets up with his mentor, Harry McKenna, this time played by Donald Sutherland. Harry shares some words of wisdom.
But you got a problem, Arthur. You need companionship.
Arthur is later ordered by the organization to kill his mentor, Harry. It's explained by his employer, Dean, played by Tony Goldwyn, that Harry has been dirty dealing, that he's putting the organization at risk, and he has to go. Arthur agrees and kills Harry, making it look like it was a carjacker who shot him. Harry's despondent son, Steve, is pretty much off his nut with anger. He goes out one night and waits for trouble, and is ready to kill any random carjacker, just for some vengeance, when Arthur stops him. Arthur takes him under his wing and makes him his protege. Their first hit together, like Bronson and Vincent's back in '72, gets messy. Then the story takes a bit of a turn from the original. Rather than Arthur and Steve getting set up to be killed on an assignment, Arthur learns Harry was framed by Dean, who is actually the bad egg, and he tricked Arthur into killing him. After surviving an attack by a group of hitmen sent by Dean, Steve and Arthur go on the offensive.
Those were my two best teams. I guess I'll have to send more.
Save the fuel. Coming for you.
And set out to kill Dean. Around this point, Steve discovers that Arthur did indeed kill his father. They set out together to the organization's HQ, kill a lot of baddies together, and ice Dean. They do this all in a loud, typical Statham action movie style. Afterwards, Steve attempts to kill Arthur at a gas station in a fiery explosion. Steve gets back to Arthur's house when a rigged bomb set by Arthur destroys the house and kills Steve. Pretty much the same as the original. Except, surveillance footage at the gas station shows that Bishop managed to escape the explosion and survived. Arthur gets into a truck and drives off into the sunset. The Mechanic is alive. There's nothing really wrong with the 2011 remake. I actually think it's a pretty decent Saturday night action flick. It's an exciting, glossy Statham action movie. I like Statham, and he can even make some low-grade action outings just bearable enough to get through. Sometimes, not all the time. He and Foster are both enjoyable to watch, and some of the action sequences are well done. The most flavor the remake adds to the story, though, is setting it in New Orleans. There's something smoothed down about the Mechanic story this time around. It plays a bit more like a cliched actioner than it should have. It's like a lot of the teeth from the original story got yanked out. The filmmakers could have gone back to the original idea of Carlino and played out the homosexual relationship in the story he first envisioned. I don't know if that would have made it any better, but it would have at least given the remake a bit more of an identity and made it more distinctive. There is a homosexual encounter, with Steve's initiation into the mechanic business as posing as an innocuous guy where the target will notice him. He's attracted to Steve, and the expected sexual encounter between the two is meant to be the opportunity to murder him in a sly way. Steve is meant to slip him some poison into his drink.
Don't mess around with this guy. Do it in the bar, make it clean.
I want to know what you know.
I want to do it.
But Steve turns what should have been a subtle death into a really brutal fight, where he only just barely survives from this huge guy. It certainly doesn't look like a natural death in any way.
I tell you to make it clean.
That's one thing that I don't care for about this movie. Foster is good, but his character of Steve seems like he's too much of a loose cannon for Arthur, or anyone to associate with. I don't think I'd ever be able to trust him or feel he's capable of this kind of mechanic work that requires a bit of finesse and patience to be good at it. When Arthur meets him, he's drinking and is a complete mess. He then stops him from hastily killing a carjacker. He takes him under his wing, trusts him, starts to train him. They have their target, and Arthur explains what must happen. And Steve just beats the guy to death. I think if I was the mechanic, and seeing how, at the outset, the kid is handling hits, I'd rethink this arrangement. But Arthur doesn't. Their next hit together, which is a very fun sequence, also gets screwed up and turns into a mess. I just don't get any real motivation behind Statham's Arthur to make this partnership work. Okay, so he might feel guilty for killing Harry and feels indebted to his son to lend some direction to his life. But I buy the reasoning of Bishop agreeing to becoming a mentor more in the original than in the remake. While Bronson's Bishop is lonely, popping pills, suffering from anxiety attacks, fainting in public, and needs someone in his life, Statham doesn't appear to be doing that bad for himself, or seems much bothered by his mechanic lifestyle. Also, Vincent Steve seems much more capable and level-headed than Foster's Steve. I said I thought that Steve's suicide girl scene was a bit far out and weird, but I can see how Bishop, watching Steve's calm demeanor during it, would make him start to think, maybe Steve is a perfect mechanic in the making. Here, Statham sees Foster's Steve just try to shoot a random carjacker, just because he's so filled with rage. I'm not sure I'd feel too comfortable or confident setting up a business partnership with this guy. Statham's Bishop is a more flattened character than Bronson's. As I said, I love the scene of Bronson going to his call girl. It's just a business transaction where his role-playing needs is imagining he's in a relationship with a woman who cares about him. The most sincere and honest thing Ireland says to him in that scene is that the phony letter she wrote him will cost him extra money.
The letter took me a while to make up.
Oh,
All right?
the letter was good. Try to think of something like it for next time.
It's sad and shows he's in some need of companionship and is looking for it. How does the remake handle this? Just the opposite. Statham is the man. This girl is crazy about him. She's excited to see him, wants to know his real name.
You ever gonna tell me your name?
Arthur.
As I said, it's more stale. I don't know why they even bothered to include this scene, actually, other than to get some sex on the screen. The shadings have been taken out of his character. Here he's just Jason Statham, the strong, silent type. He's not as tragic a figure as Bronson's lost, lonely soul who's empty and needs some human contact. There's also not a lot of philosophizing of the mechanic life by Bishop as in the original.
What I do requires a certain mindset. Revenge is an emotion that can get you killed, so no more stupid stunts like the other night.
The education that Vincent gets from Bishop in the original isn't just with how to shoot guns and kill people, but we hear lectures by Bronson. You can kind of look at it as their courtship, if you like. Bronson's Bishop has reasoned that killing isn't necessarily a bad thing, and money isn't the only incentive to do it.
But that's not the motive. Has to do with standing outside of it all on your own.
Bronson also seems to be enjoying the time he's spending with Vincent and getting to talk to someone.
There are killers and there are killers. To tell you the truth, they all have a different book of rules. To get away with it depends on the book of rules you have in your pocket at the time.
Statham's mechanic, not so much. He remains the laconic hero. Every now and then, he gives some small pearls.
Why didn't you shoot him and fuck all this? Good judgment comes from experience, and a lot of that comes from bad judgment.
But we learn nowhere near the depth of ideology that makes Bronson's Bishop tick. Then we have the ending. The original has a superb ending with Vince and Steve keenly orchestrating the death of his teacher by poisoning him. Steve took what he learned from Bishop, used that knowledge against him, and planned a clean way of killing him.
The stuff is absolutely clear when it's in solution. I just coated the inside of the glass with it and let it dry. And when the wine hit it, it went right back into solution. No trace.
Bishop was right. Steve did have the aptitude to be a mechanic. But he wasn't that good when we see that Bishop evens the score with Steve from the grave.
Steve, if you read this, it means I didn't make it back. It also means you've broken a filament controlling a 13-second delay trigger. End of game. Bang, you're dead.
The remake's ending, well, Foster Steve just shoots an open gas tank. It's certainly not as tactful a method of murder. Like the original, Steve gets his comeuppance. Yet this time, Bishop survives. We don't want to see Statham get killed, right? That would be too much of a downer, I guess. Plus, it wouldn't have allowed him to do the 2016 sequel, Mechanic Resurrection. The remake isn't bad. It's an entertaining action film. There's also a great Statham fight on a bus. Statham has done a lot of action movies, and I would definitely place his Mechanic on the higher end. But it's not as rich of a movie as the original. So as far as mechanics go, I would take Bronson over Statham in this battle.
All this, heroes. Half of them are killers.
Don't tell me that's gonna make us heroes.
I wouldn't tell you anything like that. All I'm saying is that people who stand outside the law oftentimes end up as heroes.